Okay, today we're looking at transformations of the rational function. If you remember, our parent function is f of x equals 1 over x. So if we look at our graph, we want to first find the domain and range. And if you remember looking at this, our domain is all x values except for 0 and all y values except for 0. So we have a horizontal asymptote and we have a vertical asymptote. So our domain, we've got in inequality notation, x is not equal to 0. In interval notation, be negative infinity to 0, not including it, union that with 0 to infinity. So it's everything but 0. Y is going to be the same idea, just with y's, negative infinity to 0, union 0 to infinity. And then the graph of that, if we look at our table, we've got negative 1, negative 1, negative 2.5. It gets really close to 0, so we're going to just kind of continue it on. Okay, and then we also have the 0.11, 2.5, so it comes real close and then goes out, like so. Okay, so the first thing it wants me to graph is 1 over x plus 5. Notice the point plus 5 is not under it, so we're going to not include parentheses, so we'll have plus 5. If it makes you feel better and if it looks better to you, you can do in parentheses 1 divided by x, close the parentheses, plus 5. However you want to arrange it, but you cannot have the x plus 5 in parentheses because that would put those together on the bottom. So if we just look at it, based on what we've done, you should guess that it would go up 5 units, which it does. Graph a couple points. We've got the point negative 1, 4. We'll do it in orange. Negative 1, 4. We've also got the point negative 2, 4.5. Okay, so we have our 2 points. Then we're going to keep going. If you notice, the more negative we go, the closer and closer it gets to 5. You notice the farther we go, we never actually quite reach 5. It's because my horizontal asymptote is now at 5, so all these points are going to go this way. And as we go forward, we saw back over here that we still have our error at 0. That means we've got our vertical asymptote there at 0. Okay, so then on the other side, we have the point 16. To 5.5, so again, it gets closer and closer to that horizontal asymptote at 5. If we come back in, and now we're going to do minus 3, so hopefully we would assume that this is going to go down 3. If we look at our graph, sure enough, it goes down 3 units. This would let us know that the horizontal asymptote is at negative 3. Okay, and still a vertical asymptote at 0, 0. So we'd have the point, which you can look at it. Hopefully you can assume negative 1, negative 4. It'll go. Okay, and we'll still also have this point here at 1, negative 2. Those are very hard to see. However, you should get the idea that adding 5 shifts it up 5. And the thing you want to notice is that this is doing it to the horizontal asymptote. Okay, subtracting 3 goes down 3. Okay, so when we look at 1 over x, now we're going to shift it to the left and right, hopefully. We look at y equals, we've got 1 over x plus 4. Now, notice the x plus 4 is on the bottom. It's in parentheses on this paper. It will not always be in parentheses, so just know whatever's in the denominator, go ahead and put it in parentheses, and that way you don't make any mistakes when you type it in. So 1 divided by parentheses, x plus 4. If we graph it, if you notice now my parent function has moved to the left 4. So now my vertical asymptote is going to be over here at negative 4. Okay, it's not gone up or down at all, so my horizontal asymptote is still at 0. Okay, we've not stretched or shrunk, so these points, if you notice the points each time have been over 1, up 1 from where my asymptotes meet, and they will approach their asymptotes. Okay, so then if we look at minus 1, If plus went left, we would guess that minus would go right. Which sure enough it does. So now my vertical asymptote is going to be at +1. We still have the horizontal asymptote at 0. We'll plot in our points and draw in our graph. Okay, so adding 4 went left 4. Subtracting 1 went right 1. Okay, so now we're going to look at what happens if we put a negative in front of our 1 over x. Sorry. So if we've got y equals -1 divided by x, you notice my graph has reflected the x-axis. This one used to be up top going this direction, and now it's reflected down. This one used to be on the bottom, and now it's reflected up. So the negative, we still have our asymptotes in the same place, but now this graph is at the bottom in our 4th quadrant. This side of it is now in the 2nd quadrant. Oops. Okay, so the negative reflects the x-axis. Okay, now I'm going to put in our 1 over x in there as its original, just so you can see the stretch and shrink here. Let's put it to, there we go. So now if we look at, we're going to look at 5 over x. Okay, there's my original. Here's my new one. Kind of moves away. It's because it's been vertically stretched. So if we look at some points, here's my error. We're looking at this one. So now we have point -1, -5. -2, -2.5. -3, -1 2/3. Okay, so if you notice, it's been stretched. Okay, and so then on the other side, we'll have the same idea. We've got 1, 5, 1, 2.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 1 2/3, and then it continues on from there. Okay, so this would be a vertical stretch factor of 5. Okay, so when we look at the 1/2, what that's going to do to our graph, which if you notice the 1/2, you could write it as 1/2, oops, you can't see that, 1/2 times 1 over x, but that's just 2 fractions, so if we multiply this together, we'd have 1 over 2x.
What?
So when you multiply these, that's the same thing as 1 over 2x, which is why it's written this way. So when we graph that, 1 over 2x, we graph it in. If you notice, the original one is out here. The new one, 1 over 2x, is inside of it. Okay, I went ahead and graphed it, and if you notice where it normally goes over 1 up 1, now it's only going up 1/2, which is making it a vertical shrink factor of 1/2. So again, as we look at f of x equals 1 over x minus h plus k, we can put a on top. On the bottom, with your x minus h, this is your left and right. Left if it's plus, right if it's minus. Plus k on the outside is your up, down. Up if it's plus, down if it's minus. A would be your stretch or shrink. And again, if you have a negative in front, that would be a reflect x-axis.